Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to part 3 of my tutorial on chapter 6 of the third edition of the Zelle Python book. In this particular part of the tutorial, we're going to be looking at a program that I created called Function Can Change List Parameter. Okay, so again, in chapter 6, we spent a lot of time differentiating between which kinds of values you can pass to a called function and have them changed in the function, and which ones where you can't. And it turns out it has to do with the properties of the object that you're passing. So if you pass an immutable object, like a string or an int or a float, it can't be changed by the called code, at least in context of the calling code. But if you pass a mutable object, like a list, it can actually be changed. And it's changed within the context of the called code, and then when you return to the calling code, it's changed in the context of the calling code as well. So we're doing this with a list because, we haven't covered a lot of mutable objects yet. And list is really the first one that we covered. So in terms of what I'm going to do and then what you're going to do in your exercise, we're going to use a list both times. So we're actually calling both of the programs the same thing. Function can change list parameter. But I'm going to do mine with a list of strings, and you're going to do yours with a list of something else. All right, so let's look at this. So let's look at the called code first. Okay, so two parts to the code. We have the main function, and then we have the level 2 function, and it's called shift list entries to uppercase. Okay, so that's how we're going to try to change them. Okay, now what are we doing? Well, we're using the trick that I showed you in the last example, where we put a print for a blank line at the beginning and at the end, so that the output from the main will be separated from the output from the called code by blank lines. And this is a testing trick that's very helpful. Okay, so then we're going to say the starting value of the list in the function is, and then we use the formal parameter name list in function. And how do we know that? Well, it's right up here. It's the formal parameter list in function. Okay, that's the name that we're using in here. All right, and then let's do the code that changes it. So we say for I in range of length list in function. Okay, here's what we want to do. We want a variable to use as a subscript, okay? Because we want to use this syntax for referring to each of the items on the list, where we use this name of the list plus an index in the square brackets. Okay? All right. So we have to figure out what the upper bound is. Well, the upper bound is a range that is the length. So it turns out the list that we're passing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we say length of that list, we're going to get 6. and it's going to say for I in range is 6, which, if you remember, I in range 6 is going to give you 6 values of I, but they're going to be 0 through 5. And then what we do is we process each of the members of the list. 0, and then 1, and then 2, and all the way up through 5. And what we do is that we, as input, we take the current value of item I on the list, the ith item on the list, and we call upper on it. We're expecting it to be a string. We're expecting it to have the method upper. Okay, so that it creates a new string that's in all uppercase. And we hold that in a temporary variable. Okay, call that upper value. And then we say on the next line, we assign upper value to that same position on the list. List in function index I. Okay? So what we're doing is that we are replacing the lowercase or the mixed case string, whatever's there, with a new string that is uppercase. Okay? So the strings are going to be different when we're done, but the list is going to be the same list. Okay? And then having changed all of the items in the list, having replaced them with their uppercase equivalent string, then we're going to print out ending value of list in function is list in function. And then we print a blank line, and then we come out and then we print the last thing in main. We print ending value of list in main is list in main. And this time, because it's a mutable object, okay, and again, these lists are the only mutable object that we're dealing with in the course right now. We'll be on to another one fairly quickly, okay. Because it's a mutable object, we actually can see the effect of the change from the called code in the main code. Okay, so we're going to expect to see a new value at the end. So let's see, our original list has lowercase, wet birds never fly at night. And of course, in the end, we're going to expect it to be uppercase, wet birds never fly at night. Let's give it a try. Okay, so we're going to give it a run. And let's make that text bigger so it's easier to see. Okay, so we say starting value of list in main is lowercase wet birds never fly at night. Starting value of list in the function, well, it starts out the same, wet birds never fly at night in lowercase. Ending value of the list in the function is we have replaced the strings with their uppercase translation, wet birds never fly at night. And then when we come back to main, because this was a mutable object, it really has been changed in the called code. So we do see the uppercase, wet birds never fly at night. Okay? Now, you will notice that the name that I gave to the called function implies that it's going to change the contents of the list. Shift list entries to uppercase. Okay? Well, it's pretty clear that the charter, you know, the purpose of this function is to change the value of the list. In a world where your function has that as part of its responsibilities, well, it's just fine to change the value of the parameter that you get. That's part of your responsibilities. If, in fact, you have some name and set of responsibilities that doesn't explicitly say that you're going to change the value, then you probably ought not change the value. Okay? Just because you can doesn't mean that it's always appropriate to do. And again, you really want to look to what are the responsibilities of that code, and the responsibility of this code is to change the value. So it's completely okay for it to change the value. This is also another case where the input list in main is hard-coded. We just got the values right here. And again, it's not a real general program that we would run to solve lots of different problems, but hard-coding the input like this is just fine as a demonstration. And of course, every time you run the demonstration, you demonstrate it again. Okay? And that has some value, at least while you're learning. So you're going to do a list as well, which means the name of your program is going to be the same as my tutorial example. Function can change list parameter. And but you're going to be doing a list of a different type. So any list that contains any types is a mutable value object that can be changed by the called code. Okay? So we just want you to try it with a different a type of contained object in the list, just to demonstrate that it's not only true for lists of strings. All right, off you go. That's your last one. I'll see you in the next chapter. Bye-bye.